So I guess we probably should just start with who are you?
Oh. I'm a musical theater fan. I am a Wicked fan through and through.
Well, we're going to talk about Wicked, but this being the kind of first time you've been on this channel,
Oh, what channel am I on?
this will be on the Tographer channel.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It's very,
I get invited to talk to you, and I'm like, what is it for? What
What's
are
this
we
for?
doing? What are we on? What are we doing?
well, it's very rare that I have a celebrity in the studio.
Oh, yes.
And not a lot of people know this, but your name is...
Of your own making.
Oh, it's... No. No, I do not get all the credit. But yeah, for people who don't know, you are Christopher. You're the host of Problem Solved, which is a show we've been working on now for...
Over 4 years now.
Over 4 years, yeah.
It's coming up on like the anniversary, because this is about I think it's January when we kind of started it.
Yeah, in 2020.
In 2020. So we're coming up on our next anniversary. So it'll be 4 years then, right?
Or 5.
Or 5.
However you count it.
Yeah, mathing. It's 5. 5 years we've been doing this. Okay, anyways, yes. Christopher, I'm the host of Problem Solved. We've worked together a long, long time.
Much longer than Problem Solved.
Much
we go
longer
way
than
back.
Problem Solved. Yeah.
Kind of crazy that we've worked together for as long as we have, since 2011.
2011, yeah. And it's funny to be talking to you here in the studio because, like, we have these conversations all the time.
All the time.
This is nothing new for us. Even on a car drive, in the middle of the day, in between takes of filming our show, we're having these conversations anyways. So
All the time.
just like, why not record it? Why not
Yeah.
share this conversation?
Yeah, it's funny. Me and David talk about cameras a lot, so it's been a natural fit to just discuss Lumix and Sony and Canon and Nikon and some of the filmmaking equipment and gear. But me and you end up talking about Star Wars and Marvel and
Yes,
Disney
exactly.
and movies and all that kind of
Streaming
stuff.
wars, and it's less about the content itself, just maybe the ecosystem that we're in with content creation, or especially like movies, Hollywood movies, shows, TV, that kind of stuff. Usually what you and I get into, just more the nitty gritty of like, how's the industry affecting the art that is being produced, I think is really what gets us going.
Yeah, and I think you're one of the few people that I've had like the best conversations with after a movie. Like we'll come out of the theater and we'll actually spend time talking about it beyond just like that was good or oh it was dumb, which tends to be a lot of the kind of base reaction that people have. But me and you will be, oh, that scene, in the second act where they,
Exactly.
oh, that was so good. And not in necessarily like an artsy fartsy way, but in a, I don't know, you watch a lot of YouTube content that's very meta-analysis. And then you're one of the few people that I can talk to that stuff about.
The YouTube deep dives is basic. I'll watch any movie or TV show, and then I'm immediately on YouTube. Like, I need the Easter eggs. I need the analysis. I need the history of how this all came together. Because even early on, before I went to film school, all that kind of stuff, I loved behind the scenes of any movie, and that's what I truly cared about, the process of making it. The end result is always great and fantastic. You can lose yourself in a movie. You can, be entertained, laugh, cry, all that stuff. But how it's made, how the sausage is made is always more entertaining to me than the final product itself. So we've always gotten to those discussions, after a movie. Did you like it? I loved it. It was amazing. It was the best movie. But, and then by the end of the conversation, like an hour or two later, we were like, did you actually like the movie? And it was like,
Yeah, it was great.
It was great. It was great. But I didn't like anything about it.
Yeah.
Or I had my commentary on just about every aspect of it.
Everyone's got their opinion. And I think you're like me in that, I'll watch an hour-long TV show and then watch 10 hours
Yes.
of analysis
Yeah,
from
exactly.
YouTubers. And you'll go watch like a 2-hour movie and spend a week just going through
yeah.
all of like the behind the scenes, the news, the drama, which is sometimes even more interesting than the movie itself.
And it changes how you see what the end product is. This happens a lot with especially like the Star Wars Disney shows, is I'll watch them, I'll have my visceral reaction to it, and then I'll watch commentary or like what other people are saying about it, and it'll change my opinion a little bit of it sometimes. So it just depends on what the entertainment is itself, what media it is. But yeah, it's I love diving into all the what, why, how, all that stuff.
So if you're listening and you're a fan of cooking, cleaning, life hacks in general, you can go check out Problem Solved. It's
Yeah.
the show we've been working on now for 5 years. And you'll see lots of Christopher sharing some really helpful information around the house. But today, we're actually going to be talking about something totally separate from that. And it's very appropriate that you wore your green shirt.
Not on purpose.
It was a little bit.
It was a little bit on purpose.
I'm curious to talk to you about this because you're the only person I know that's seen Wicked, the movie, part one. That's the big thing is part one. But you actually have seen it many times on Broadway.
So I've seen it on actual Broadway once, but I've seen the touring version twice.
Okay, so I would say you're more familiar with Wicked
More
than
familiar,
I am.
yeah. And quite honestly, I mean, Wicked's been around. I don't know. Don't trivia me on Wicked, really. But Wicked's been on Broadway for forever. You know, like I think 20 years or something like that. It's been on Broadway for a long, long time. I didn't see it. I latched on to the album early on because I was like, but it's not easy for me to live on the West Coast. It's not easy to go to New York, see a musical, especially a super, super popular one. The first time I saw it was actually when we were in New York together. Project long, long ago. You probably don't remember this. Oh. Do you remember being snowed in New York?
Yes.
We had our flights. We were ready to leave. We had done a project together in New York with all of our other coworkers, friends at the time. And we were snowed in. And we were like, well, we have an evening free in New York. What are we going to do? And I said, I'm going to Wicked. And those tickets, $300 I paid for those tickets. And at the time, that in my life and career, and still now, I don't know if I could spend $300.
But $300 back then.
$300 back then. But I was like, I've got to do it. It's performing. We're snowed in. I never have time in New York to go to shows, do stuff. I've been a fan of the album for forever. Before even seeing the musical, I had read the book. I had listened to the album umpteen times, knew every word of all the music. So I said, I owe it to myself to spend the $300. I had a fifth row center seat. It was the most magical time ever. I was already beside myself emotionally before the curtain even rose because the set's pretty cool. They have the map of Oz as the curtain before it goes up and all that. So the whole thing I was super into as a Broadway show. Then it toured a couple times, and of course, since then, there's been all the rumors about the movie. The movie's coming out, and of course, nobody could escape all the marketing of this movie, which is, I feel unprecedented, especially in recent years. Just all the hysteria and hype about Wicked. So the movie was coming out, and even through the trailers and stuff, I'm like, I have my doubts, I have my worries, but I was trying not to have a big expectation of, the movie. Especially, I think the hardest thing Wicked, for me, and I think for most fans of Wicked, the hardest thing it has is all your expectations from the show, from the album. It's been over a decade of me envisioning how a movie would be for this. So they're up a lot against a lot of expectations, a lot of the fan... the fan storyboards and the fan scenic design in your head, and even the casting, even when they announced the cast, there was a lot of, even me, I was rolling my eyes. I'm like, we'll see how this goes. I love Ariana Grande as a performer, Cynthia Erivo. She's a beautiful performer. She's got a gorgeous voice. But yeah, you put all these things together for a movie, and I keep saying expectations. There's just so much they're fighting against to then make a good movie that everybody wants to see.
And I'm almost the opposite, where I hadn't listened to any of the music. I haven't seen it on Broadway. I didn't even know it was a book. So and
I told you that it was 2 parts.
Yeah, and you're like, it's actually part 1, which I'm so sick of movies. I think Dune was the kind of the most prominent one in my mind, where I'm excited for the trailer, I'm going to the movies, and then the movie starts and it says Dune part 1, and I go, what? So I'm glad I knew that going into Wicked, because all the trailers, everything was just Wicked, 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 and it starts with Wicked part 1,
and then it slowly fades in afterwards.
And there must be something about saying it's a part 1 that they know will hurt sales, I think. And then they pull out the rug at the last second when you're watching it. You see, you've already bought the ticket. You're sitting down eating your popcorn, and they go part 1, and I think there's everyone kind of their stomach drops a little bit, going really, are we really doing this?
Here's my thought on the 2 parts. The the filmmakers have explained, why they broke it up into two parts. The theatrical version, the musical is intentionally broken up into two sections. You get your 15-minute, 20-minute intermission. It ends with Defying Gravity. It's this big crescendo moment, and you're in the theater like, how do I move on from this? And that's how you experience it in the theater. And I think they were trying to give people that in the movies without, like what movie had an intermission. I think Titanic did actually back in the day. Yeah. They would play the movie. And I kind of want to believe that would have been a better way to do it. Is to say this is a 2-part movie. We're releasing it all at the same time. It's going to be like a 4-hour, what is it? Lawrence of Arabia epic. Go back even to the time of Wizard of Oz where like going to the movie theater was like an activity. That's how Wizard of Oz became such a big thing. So this is Wicked. This is, Wizard of Oz for a new generation. And I kind of wish they would have done something different to say, like, we're presenting this in 2 parts, but it's all going to be all in the theaters at once. Even charge people twice? I don't know.
Makes it more money, yeah. Because that's what seems like why they're doing it.
And that's the other thing. That's the studio half. There's the artistic half where they're like, we really couldn't leave it at.
Couldn't fit it.
We couldn't fit it all into one movie. We couldn't kill our darlings and edit it down. And
here I am watching it like you could have fit it.
Yes,
you could have fit it. There's a lot of padding, but
and that's some of the criticism that the play has. The musical, the theatrical version or the theater version.
The Broadway.
Broadway. Maybe I'll say Broadway because I keep saying theatrical
yeah.
and that's the same word you use for movies. Anyways, is that the first half goes so quick. It's like song after song after song. And this movie, I think, pads it out so much. There's all these scenes and all these moments, which I think are great in the movie, but they like just pad out all this time between the musical numbers when in the actual, Broadway style, you're kind of moving from song to song, moment to moment pretty quickly. To get to Defying Gravity, to get to intermission. And a lot of the emotional, we talk about stakes in a lot of shows, a lot of that emotional stakes and all of like the heightened drama comes in the second half.
Oh, okay.
So this half, I feel like is very, it doesn't have a lot of depth to it, I want to say. You can read a lot of stuff into it, but it's more of like a bubblegum happy, it's mostly Glenda, led kind of story, and they're in school. The second half, they're not in school anymore.
Is there like a time skip then?
Kind of. The whole book and the musical is like the life and time of the Wicked Witch. So they're condensing years down into her whole, from birth to the time that
which
she
we
gets
see a little bit
by
of in the movie.
She gets a bucket of water poured on her and melts. Melting. Does she melt? Anyways,
spoilers. Okay.
Are we doing spoilers?
I don't know. I don't want to know. I want to go into part 2 just as blind as part 1.
It might be better. Might be better.
I have no idea because I'm sitting there going. They showed in the movie. You mentioned the bucket of water, which I just watched Wizard of Oz.
The original.
Yeah, like a week ago because my kids had never seen it. I fell asleep again. I don't think I've ever actually watched Wizard of Oz all the way through because I always fall asleep. It's so dull and boring to me, and I hate the land of Oz. And nothing about it is magical or amazing to me. Maybe it's that I didn't see it as a kid, but I will say,
weird.
I will say my expectations going into Wicked were so low that I actually came out like, oh, that was like kind of nice, kind of surprising. There was a lot of the casting I really enjoyed. Jeff Goldblum I thought did a great job. Ariana Grande, she was actually perfect for me in that role because it's like the kind of person you're not supposed to like, and you're kind of like, you're terrible.
Yeah.
So that was good. And but yeah, I'm still not in love with Oz. I think I really struggled around the point in the movie where the prince, what's his name, Fiyero, he shows up, and I'm sitting there going like, what's the plot of this movie, this story? They're not even trying to do anything. She just randomly kind of happens to end up at this school because she happens to have these magical powers, but there's no mission, there's no goal. It's just watching some students at a school just living life, kind of some of the petty bullying and, picking on each other. Like, oh, I'm like, what? There's nothing happening. And it was only once the the animal plot line of the
Yeah.
animals talking and
Where are all the animals going?
Where are the
Why can't
animals
they talk
going?
anymore?
Then I'm like, oh, there's a conspiracy here. Okay, now I'm invested. And unfortunately, maybe that's what happens in part 2, that we get a lot of that payoff.
Yeah.
Because in part 1, the parts that are there, I really liked, but everything else, I was kind of like, you're just going through the motions of character development, I guess, and that can be satisfying. But I really wanted more plot action to keep the momentum going, aside from the bickering drama of like the love triangle that happens between the two main leads and the Fierro guy, and then there's like some other romantic side plots. There wasn't enough there to really hook me, aside from the animal thing, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah. Excuse me.
I know, it's that time of
We'll
year
cut it out.
where everyone's coughing and sniffling and
I
sneezing.
was like, been trying to hold it in. I was like, just get through it. Just get through it. Anyways. I think that's the disservice that the 2-part thing has done to Wicked, is there's all this setup of Easter eggs. There's all these like setup of plots in this first part that don't get paid off because we're waiting for a whole nother movie to like wrap these things up. And I think this is also the difficult thing that this movie has done is, if you've seen the musical, if you're a fan of the musical, you know how things end, you know how things go. So the whole movie is just you going like, oh, you see what they did there? They hinted at this thing later on. Oh, you see what they did there?
And all that's going right over my head.
It's
I don't
going
even get
over
it.
other people's head, but then it's fan service for people who know the musical. And I don't think there's, like I said, it's just not a lot of substance, not a lot to go off of, like plot wise, to have part 1 just wrapped up in itself. It's
Yeah.
basically, she's an outcast. She meets this girl, befriends the popular girl, and, then in a quick second turn at the very end of the movie, now she's this villain, or looked at as this villain. So it does kind of make you go like, well, what are you trying to say? Like, what are we doing? Like, what story are you trying to tell? Because you're breaking it up. You're not telling the full story.
And the Broadway version, you said, is old. It's been around for a while.
yeah,
It's
yeah, a long
iconic
time, yeah.
at this point. But do you know how old the book is? Is that even older?
No, the book is actually pretty recent. I think
Oh,
the
okay.
book was published in the early 90s.
All right.
So the book originally was published in the early 90s, and then it was only like 5 or 6 years, 5 or so years later that the musical was developed from the book. So it's a pretty short turn where something like Wizard of Oz was written, long ago, and then adapted into a musical, adapted into a movie. So this Wicked movie is kind of following the same path as the original Wizard of Oz. I think they try really, I think this is what also gets me. I'll bring this up as a point of maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. Wicked is a prequel, or like a different take, a different perspective of Wizard of Oz. But this movie tries to be a prequel to Wizard of Oz without really looking like Wizard of Oz, or without really like, I don't know, I compare it maybe like to Star Wars, where they made like the prequels, and the prequels are clearly in different technology, different filming style as the originals.
Yeah.
So then there's this disconnect of like, this is the same world, but these feel like two completely different things. Or at least they're saying it's the same world. They're taking some creative liberties with what they're choosing to adapt to Wizard of Oz, the musical, and not. They're just doing nods to it. But I also think it's just like you said, like Oz is a weird place.
I don't find it charming. It's bizarre and weird in an off-putting kind of way, and I don't know what I would equate that to, other than it's like there's a lot of content, cartoons back in the day as a kid that I would watch that just didn't connect with me in the same way that like the Disney classics did, the Renaissance era Disney
Yeah.
movies, where you're like, it's beautiful to look at, the music's great, and then there's other stuff where you're like, I'm thinking of like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, where as a kid I got this like weird feeling where I was like, it's kind of ugly
Yeah.
and trashy, and I'm not saying that this movie's ugly. I think it's actually, but like Monkeys with Wings is like kind of like off-putting.
Yeah, especially
Psychologically.
how graphic that scene is where they
Ah,
transform.
yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about that later. We'll get into that because I have a whole thing about that. But anyways,
So yeah, there's things like the Emerald City where it has to me no substance. It's the iconic matte painting in a movie that someone said, "Oh, it's the Emerald City, and it's full of life and technology, and the wonderful wizard." But it never feels like it's a real place. It doesn't feel like it's inhabited by real people. I can't imagine them going to like the grocery store and like doing their laundry, and it just feels like a set. Like it feels fake and artificial, and maybe that's the point. But then, as a viewer, that's the part that I disconnect with the most.
And this is my biggest complaint about the movie. I loved it. I think the performances are great. The casting's great. I, of course, always love the music.
The singing is phenomenal.
There's really nothing they can do to ruin the music for me because I love it in general. But it was the settings. People have been giving the movie a lot of praise for the, we built real sets. They feel like theater stage sets just built in the countryside or in a backlot somewhere that they filmed on. I'm not knocking the because I think they're gorgeous, stunning sets.
Yeah,
but
the production,
as they translate to film, as they translate to me, the viewer, they just don't have any impact. They don't have any lived in.
Yeah.
And I had this realization just pretty recently after, my deep dives into the commentaries and the behind the scenes and all that. And I wish they would have taken some notes. I think a movie like this can learn from other, huge. This movie should have been a huge, it is a huge blockbuster, but it should have been one of those like cinematic feats. And here's what I'm comparing it to. So like the school looks cool. It's polished. It's brand new. Take a note from Hogwarts. When that first Harry Potter movie came out, you're like, this is a real place. I can get my letter and I can go to this place. That's how those movies felt. That school felt ancient. It felt old. It felt lived in. It felt like it had mysteries to unravel without saying anything. It's just kids, 3 little kids running around the school. I feel like Wicked could have done the same thing. Instead of creating this brand new, gorgeous, stunning set cliffside and somewhere in Oz, make some miniatures, make it practical, have some hidden details, weather it, make it look old. I think the only detail they did was it was like Jeff Goldblum Oz, and something hits it, like something goes flying and hits the backdrop, and the animals used to rule the school. But you could go so much deeper just in the production design and how it feels to the audience versus this, really polished set, beautiful set with CGI background. So I wish it had more of that Hogwarts lived in real, there's mysteries, there's stuff on the ground that, are just Easter eggs, just things the production team put there, but have more, more meaning, more history. I don't think it has that. And Oz in general, I wish had more of this like epic realm feel, like not the Wizard of Oz. What am I thinking? Lord of the Rings had.
Yeah, good
so
example.
I feel like the filmmakers could have taken so many notes from how those movies were shot, how are they made, how they made those worlds feel so much bigger and so much more real. Because this definitely feels like. And am I throwing us under the bus by saying this? We might have done a better job. It's just like throw some money at us and say like put on a production of Wicked, in the backyard kind of thing. It feels too small. It feels too compact, and that was really felt for me during the Oz scene where they go one short day in the Emerald City. You're saying the Emerald City is this New York type place, a magical New York. And they have like 2 sets. They have like the wizard's chamber and like this one courtyard where there's like 100 vendors and a whole bunch of extras and a whole lot of eye candy. But like you said, where's the grocery store? It just feels like the exit. And then this is how they treat it too, because they have like the postcards and all that. They treat it like the exit of a gift shop, like the gift shop of an attraction. So I just got off the ride. I got off the Oz train, and now I'm just at the gift shop, and it's just one courtyard is this whole place of Oz. And when she's flying around at the end singing Defying Gravity, I'm like, this is a huge freaking place. You could have done, during that montage where they're doing all the stuff in
up and down the
Oz,
streets,
you could have been in different locations, not a hair salon, a gift shop, and the palace.
Yeah, there's that radical difference between what you're describing, which sounds like a a part of the park at Disney World or
Yeah.
something, where this is now you're in the Emerald City, versus something that we both watched recently, which was like House of the Dragon, which is also sets and
Yes.
just it's not like they're using like giant real places. They're building a lot of stuff, but it feels worn down, lived in. It's a little dirty. It's a little grimy in the parts that are supposed to be that way. But even in other parts, it feels like, oh, this is a more of a real place that someone actually spends their time versus like I showed up at an amusement park and now I get to see all the bright lights. That part of Wicked actually was really strange to me, not knowing the story. There's the scene where they get on the train. It's even in the trailer. Like, come with me. We're going. Oh, and let's have an adventure. And then a minute later, they're like there.
Yeah.
And I assume that's from the play version, the Broadway version, where like that transition, you wouldn't spend time on a train probably.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of, oh, now we're at the next place. But in a movie for like this climactic, like we're going on an adventure, like almost like a road trip style movie, I thought we'd get a scene on the train. I thought like something would happen on the way to the Emerald City. But no, they just so much buildup for come with me. Like, oh, okay. We're here. We made it. Okay, great. Now we're meeting the wizard. Like it moved so quickly in a way that felt weird to me from a storytelling perspective, where you'd want to like get more out of that. Like we're going on an adventure. Now we're on a mission to get to this place. Okay, cool. Now I'm invested. Now there's a plot. Now there's direction. Nope. We already just mission accomplished. On to the next thing.
And I think even in the part 1, part 2, they could have done something where they called, and I think this is the disservice that they do with these, like Dune. Okay, we're taking our one movie, one book, breaking it up into two. It's just I feel like they think like the studio's like, it's just easier to market it that way. I wish they would have done Dune Rising, you know? And I think that changes how you think about things. It's
like giving it a subtitle.
Giving it like Wicked, because the book is like
Journey
Wicked,
to Oz or something.
Wicked, the life and times of the Wicked Witch. So maybe give it a title and make each movie feel whole and cohesive in its own, versus setting the expectation that like you're only getting part of the story. They try to wrap it up. But I'm wondering if there's a better way filmmakers can do this, because it's the same thing with like Lord of the Rings.
But those are each a movie for a book that was
yeah.
written with a beginning, middle, and end. And I think it's always hard. Like you can make your trilogy, Star Wars, you can have your Harry Potter, books 1 through 7. But the moment you split book 7 up into two parts,
part 1 and
now
2.
you're not telling a complete story, and that is very unsatisfying for a viewer. Whether you love the spectacle and the music and the acting and all these things, like yes, that's all, fun and enjoyable. Like I can enjoy the production value just as much as anyone else, but the story itself, if you're not beginning, middle, and an end, kind of your 3-act or 4-act structure. The other thing it just happened to, and it kind of actually two very big examples that got kind of broken up, was the Spider-Man Across the Universe, Spider-Verse, and even Mission Impossible. They did this whole part 1, part 2, and then they pulled the plug on that because the new Mission Impossible is now Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. It's part 8.
Dead Reckoning, not part 2.
Yeah, not part 2 anymore. So the idea that these studios can just break stories up to make more money, charge you for the ticket twice. Please do it. Make more movies. Get the money you need to make. But I don't think you should do it by sacrificing what is a complete story from beginning to end and arbitrarily cutting it at halfway through and saying, well, this is complete. Yeah. And because it's not complete, you're basically ending in the middle.
Yeah.
And I don't know who Back to the Future, another musical we saw recently, part 2 and part 3 kind of do that, but I think were crafted and written in such a way that it was like, no, this is the end of number 2, that we told our story in the future, and now we're going to go back to the Wild West, which if you do it with intention and design, you can be successful by having a 1, 2, 3 and breaking up the parts. But I think when they just take something that already exists as a story and cut it in half, you're not going to get the 10 out of 10 praise from me. Although I did quite enjoy the movie.
Yeah. And that's what's funny is I left the movie feeling so fulfilled, like happy that I heard the music, happy that like I laughed, happy that I like got weepy during moments. They create really beautiful moments in the movie, but I think as a whole it could have just gone so much further and done so much more to earn the praise that it's getting. I feel like it's getting undue praise a little bit.
Well, it's certainly
because I wish it did have that. Like I said, just even cinematically had more of that Harry Potter, that Lord of the Rings feel to it, just in the way it looks and feels. Like, oh, I'm going to this magical world that I know nothing about, and it feels lived and it feels real. Like even the Munchkin Land, there's 100 people walking around, and there's like 4 houses, 4 buildings. I'm like, where do these people live? Like, how do these people live like this? It just doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
It feels like a set. And that's the difference. On Broadway, in a musical, you only have a little bit of space to work with. So the audience already knows to use their imagination to fill in the gaps. They know that this is not real. They're not looking at a window to a new world. So they fill in the gaps. But in a movie, you can make all that real. You can show all that real world. You can, fill in those gaps, I guess.
Maybe it's a dying art, the set design, just make it dirty. It's the telltale sign of anything like cheap or just feels wrong to, you're telling the story set in medieval times, or it's, a biblical story, or it's something, ancient, or, a world with a lot of history. And everything looks brand new and polished, like it just came out of the Amazon warehouse, like the costume, the wig, the hat, the whatever. And you're going like, and you can see it in a lot of movies. Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter are great examples. Game of Thrones is a great example of where it's done well. People have like sweat and dirt and grime, and their stuff is like a little worn and tattered. And then you watch something else where everything is like they didn't even like the shirt's like perfectly ironed. You're going, this feels like that shirt is too starched. Yeah. Very weird.
Exactly. I think that's exactly it. Just in the visuals, is everything's too pristine, too perfect. Is it gorgeous? Yes. I think the sets are incredible. I think the costuming, incredible. Super talented people here. There just needs to be like one extra person, or maybe it's a direction thing or producer thing or whatever, to say like, let's make this a little lived in. Let's make this one of the character Harry Potter. I keep comparing this to Harry Potter, but it's like Ron's robes, because he's up from the poor family, are all tattered and stuff. It's like, have that character who has to have the hand-me-down robes. Or, Elphaba's been neglected by her father her whole life. He doesn't really like her. So she needs like grimy clothes. Like Matilda, there's all these other stories that have been brought to life that like so much in the design of what the characters are wearing and the aging, the weathering, like says so much. And I think this movie just wanted to look good and not really tell a story with any of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think
that's no criticism. No. If any of these people are watching, talented. I could never. Yeah. But also, it's like, ooh, I'm just as a movie lover, I'm just missing a little bit of realism.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between you make a set for a movie and you paint it and it's got that like brand new shine and sheen to everything. There's no sun damage, there's no weathering because it's brand new, and they just go film on it because it's ready and we're done. Versus like a Broadway show, they're like, it's taking abuse every night, that set. It's getting scuffed up, banged up, and they're probably, painting things every day, touch-ups, but like you can't keep up with it just because there's just so much wear and tear happening. And so over time that stuff does feel, they're dancing in the clothes every night, like it's over and over and over again. And they're patching stuff up and buying new stuff, but you're always cycling through and you're creating this like patina on everything that makes it feel nice. And even on a stage where you're in a Broadway theater and you're watching something happening, it's impressive what they're able to do on a stage. I think of going to see Back to the Future, the musical, seeing a DeLorean fly through is like overwhelming in a real physical stage from a space. But you watch that in a movie, you're like, yeah, whatever, like it's CGI, who cares, no big deal.
And they had to do the fire,
Yeah.
So that's what's cool about live Broadway shows, is they pull so much magic, I'm talking about like, magic, like disappearing tricks and fire and illusions on stage. And there's something about the medium of filmmaking. I don't think they used enough of the filmmaking language to translate the theater version to this. There was something I wanted to bring up about translate it. You had mentioned like on the train, they just magically get there. I think that's where the film should have taken liberties in between the musical numbers.
Yeah.
Is to tell a more cinematic story in between there. Like, fill out, the train ride, make it more of a journey, do some other. They did a few things. They pulled in some more information from the book or more things from the book, like Elphaba's early childhood, where she's like, a young girl. That's not in the play, really.
Oh, okay.
Or that's not in the Broadway version. They kind of sprinkle in other details that are pulled from the book, more context, and then they flesh out, a few scenes from it. But I just don't think they did enough.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now that you're talking about these scenes in the movie. One scene that actually stands out in my mind as feeling more of that like authentic, genuine is when she goes. I think it's in the town. It's kind of hard to tell, but she leaves the school. Elphaba leaves the school, and she's like spying on the animals talking.
Yeah.
And
she follows Dr. Dillman, and he's talking to his animal friends
in some like kind of cozy cottage.
Yeah.
I don't know where they
I think
are.
it's his house.
Maybe.
I thought it was a pub at first, but then I think it's his house.
But that felt like a real place to me.
Yeah.
That didn't feel like a set. It felt like an actual space where you'd have that type of conversation, the hush hush, we can't let anyone hear what we're doing. And then I think, of all the other like crazy, wild, like perfect sets, there's no trash or litter or anything anywhere. And then, comparing it to Harry Potter, where there's like papers and pages and pens and ink and like there's just so much stuff everywhere. The clutter, I think you need that. And to take something like what they do on Broadway, where they do bring the magic through spectacle and special effects, and they're fire shooting off, or they're doing something really cool and it's impressive. None of that is important in a movie anymore, because it's all like kind of like you see it every single day in whatever movie, or even in TV now. Like the special effects are incredible. So I think you do need to take it in a slightly different direction, which is not necessarily focusing on the spectacle. Her flying around on the broomstick it looks like any other time I've seen a goofy character flying around.
All in CGI, except for her face.
Yeah. So that's not impressive to me. What's impressive is when the world feels genuine and realistic and grounded and like tangible, because I'm seeing these fantastical things that I know are fake. You got one character who's green, you've got talking goats, you've got, all this magic and stuff happening. But if you can make that feel real through a movie, I don't need as much spectacle, because now I'm invested in the characters. I'm invested in the stakes, even though it's kind of like hard to tell exactly what they are early on. The other thing I would say, as far as like character development and cutting things off halfway through, and why that's not so satisfying, is I don't know, does Elphaba even go on like a character arc, a character journey?
In the musical?
In the movie, Wicked Part
movie.
1. The Elphaba character, our main hero, our protagonist, because I say Galinda kind of has an arc.
Yeah, she goes more self-absorbed, more like in her own world, her own like self-gain is kind of her thing.
That's where she ends, or
I think she starts off selfish and she learns selflessness a little bit. Elphaba shows her that like not everybody has privilege. Not everybody gets everything handed to them.
Yes.
That you need to work for what you want. And I think that's more of Galinda's journey.
Yeah, she develops as a character.
I think she changes.
Becomes a little bit more complex, a little bit deeper, even though at the end, she still has her general moral philosophy and grounding. But Elphaba seems to just, what she thinks at the beginning is what she thinks at the end. And I don't know if that changes in part 2, but certainly in part 1, that's not a very satisfying arc to just have information revealed to you. And it goes like, you say, well, now I know this new information, but I'm going to be the exact same person I've been this whole time, this defiant, rebellious, independent person. But that's like who you were at the beginning. You've not changed at all.
And I feel like that turn at the end is super abrupt. I wanted her to be tempted a little bit by like...
Yeah.
And I know they have a short amount of time. I don't exactly know how they could have done this, but it's like the wizard... They found out that the wizard's behind all the animal stuff, and she's like, no, I'm going to defy gravity and start flying and read this book and stuff. And it happens so quickly versus I wanted her to be tempted by the easy button a little bit, by just conforming. Oh, they're offering me a job, a position in Oz. That's what I've always wanted. I'm going to have to sacrifice my morals a little bit. I've loved the animals this whole time, and I've been trying to help them, but now I'm getting what I want. I wanted a little bit more of her fall into her into actual darkness than actual her. I think the way the movie presents it is like you said. There's no real change in her. There's no real.
No, because she doesn't have to change because she changes the world around her. The whole school comes to accept and embrace her, even though she's like the black sheep, like the outsider at the beginning. Now they all kind of like her. Even the Prince Fiero,
Even the Prince guy,
he likes her.
Fiero likes her.
He likes her. Galinda likes her. Everyone likes her. And there's things that I wonder in not knowing anything about the book or the play, but I'm just thinking. So her sister is in a wheelchair the whole time. Is there a spell in this book that could heal her sister?
We're getting there. That's an Easter egg too. We're getting there. And see, I think that's also the disservice is they're laying the groundwork for a lot of the big dramatic changes, a lot of the reveals that are coming in a year from now, So I think
because that's the temptation I wanted. She says I'm fine being green because that's the kind of thing at the beginning. Well, I'm going to go meet the wizard so I can not be green anymore, which seems to be the beginning of her story.
She's my heart's passion is to help the animals.
Help the animals. But surely there's other things in your life that if you were more ostracized, you would want to not be green anymore and actually find the acceptance that you've been searching for, find the love that you've never had because even your own parents don't love you. Which does her mom die or something?
Her mom's died. Dies. That's something they don't really fill in. Her mom dies. She brings it up, but not that they glaze over it. She brings it up. Her mom had to take the milk thistle or whatever it is to make sure that her baby sister wasn't green, and that's what forced her into early labor, and then the mom dies. So they say
is that why she's in a wheelchair?
And that's details from the book that aren't even in the musical.
Interesting. Is that why the sister is in a wheelchair?
That's why she's in a
complication with this.
Complications in birth that led her to be paralyzed or not able to walk, and then the mom died from that birth.
But that all seems unnecessary. She didn't need to take it.
The father forced her to take it so she wouldn't be green. They were like...
Because he doesn't know?
He doesn't know that Elphaba's not really his biological daughter.
Yes.
Which is, there's all of that, all the theories and all the meaning behind, why is she green? Well, she's birthed from this affair, from this green elixir that, they were drinking while they were having their affair. And what does that say about families and relationships and... the effect it has on the children. It's like a mark that they have to live with for your poor choices. So there is depth and a lot of meaning. I just think they glaze over it, a little bit versus having a clear stance of this is what we want the movie to be about. Here's what we want to say.
Yeah, I do agree. I wanted more temptation.
Yeah.
I think getting that moment with the wizard and even a reveal of I'm your real dad. I'm the one I love. None of that is really pressed upon to a point where she'd be confronted. It's very obvious oh, you're locking up animals and you're taking away their ability to speak, so you're the bad guy now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to defy you. It's versus, you would have done this the whole time.
Yeah.
If you knew this from the beginning of the movie, you would have made the same choice.
And I wish they would have filled in a little bit, in this part one, filled in more details about the animals. Like you were saying, I think that's that's the most interesting thing about this story is this world divided that, why are you casting the animals out? Clearly they have
Is there a good answer to that?
There isn't. Not one presented in the movie yet.
Even in part two.
Even in part two, in which I wish they had some more clarity in that, and even more animal characters that you can relate to.
Yeah.
My original thought was I wish, and this is maybe a bias I have from the stage version, the Broadway version, is the animals are presented like humans, just with animal mask on. So
in the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
the lion is.
Yes, they're more humanoid, but they're animals. In this, does the whole CGI character, which even in the beginning, the bear, Nessie, I think is what she called, the bear that takes care of her, the bear nanny. There's a part of me that was no, I kind of like the CGI animals, as actual animals who can talk, versus if you had a costumed person who, the Chewbacca's, just a person in a Smokey the Bear costume, I'm going to raise you. So my first thought was make it more real, put people in costumes to perform these characters. But then I'm I don't have a problem with the CGI characters. I just wish they had more of a character, more of a role. I wish that, Dr. Dilliman is cool. It's like, oh, a goat professor here? I wish they explored the animal side more.
And maybe even more than just the one character.
Yeah, and more than, just
Like,
the one character.
He's the only animal professor, the last, which I guess gives it some gravity. But, just a few other like side characters, other people in the background that maybe is like the cook, like who makes their lunches, who like the people who are been pushed to the outside and we don't want to hear from you anymore because you're an animal. And I'm going, why is this?
And I mean, whatever your story motivation or whatever commentary you're making about the real world, you could have these animals in like service jobs in the background, pushed to the background, silenced that way, not like they're turning into animals and that's why they can't talk anymore. But they should have been more present in the background.
Because
you're paying attention to Glinda singing and you're paying attention to all the spectacle and fun, but look at this poor animal in the background, that doesn't get to do what, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see how they connect those dots, because it seems to me the plot line being that the animals are becoming animals and that they can't talk, they just are their base animal form. But then, like, obviously in The Wizard of Oz, we get the lion who can talk and sing and dance and all these things. So I'm wondering what that arc ends up being. And I am curious to see how...
the lion in the classroom, that's the Cowardly Lion.
The lion. Oh, that cub.
Yeah, the cub is the Cowardly Lion.
Are you supposed to know that? Or it's
just... So that's the other thing, too, is it's a cool payoff. The spoiler alert. It's a cool payoff in the second half of the musical. And even if you have, like, some base knowledge of what's it called? Of The Wizard of Oz, the original. They lay a lot of Easter eggs, like lines. Like Telfiero gets stuff that has meaning later on in the story. When she said he's scared, he's trembling to the lion, because he's scared, he's trembling because he's the Cowardly Lion.
Oh, okay.
So they say these lines, but they don't have any payoff in this movie. And I know people will watch this movie before they see part 2, but I feel like so much of the context is going to get lost.
The best way to watch it will end up being watch it as one continuous thing, part 1 and part 2 back to back, and then you'll get those, goes back to what you said at the very beginning, which was, I wish they just found a way to do that with this piece.
And I think that would have been the bold move for this movie, is we're doing 2 parts, but we're releasing them together. It's this huge cinematic epic. Set aside some time. We're going to have the movie theaters are going to have special menus for food you can eat during the hour-long intermission in between. They could have found some marketing spend to do something that like no other movie has before. It was really interesting. I saw Cursed Child, which is the Harry Potter musical. That's not a musical, but the Harry Potter Broadway show. And now they condensed it down to one show. But when it first premiered and when I saw it, it was a Broadway show presented in 2 parts. So you literally had to clear your whole schedule for the day and go see part 1 in the morning, and you had like a couple hour break to go get lunch, do whatever, and then you came back in the evening for the second half of the play. And clearly that didn't have longevity because people can't, to this. But I think it was so cool to have that experience because it's something that a musical, a play, a theater, a stage production hasn't really ever done. And I thought it was such a cool way to spend my day, to see the first half of this story, come back and see the second half. Now they've since condensed it. But I say that as a stage thing because I wish they did that for the screen, where they said, nobody's done this before. We have this 4-hour, 4.5 hour long epic that we want you to see, but you're just going to have to commit to see. And I think the Wicked fan, like as big as this movie is right now, and as much as people love Wicked, I think that would have been a cool thing. People would be, that would have taken over social media. I brought my tent and my camp chair to like watch part 2 later on. I brought my sleeping bag so I could take a nap in between part 1 and part 2. I bet you it would have been this whole media frenzy if they found some way to do the Titanic thing and just give people an intermission in the beginning.
Yeah, make it feel huge and special. Because I do like the idea of making that, like you said, the Cursed Child scenario where they do the big thing at the launch and then over time they either condense it or then they split it up. Because I could easily imagine where 1 week only Wicked Part 1 and Part 2 showing full day, experiences. And then next week it's, you can go see which one you want, or you could even like have theaters where they're showing Part 1, Part 2. However you wanted to break it up. There'd have to be some strategy there, but having the complete piece at the beginning, I think is more satisfying as a viewer than, hey, here's half of a story. Now wait a year, right? Is that what it's going to be? A whole year?
Yeah, a whole year.
And come back later, and then you go, but like, what happened in Part 1? I guess I got to go watch that first. I'm going to watch it at home, and then I'm going to go to the theater the next day. It just makes it really inconvenient to get the full experience, which is the complete story.
And that's the double dip that they're going to do when the Part 2 comes out in a year from now, or Part 2 comes out, is they're going to do the thing. They're going to re-release, Part 1, and then they're going to have double feature days. So they're going to do exactly what I'm talking about. It just won't be for a year.
Yeah,
so
it's in the opposite order. When you've already seen it.
Opposite order. Yeah.
You've already seen it, so you're like, okay, I'm not going to pay extra.
And I think it does you a disservice in general, because what if this Part 1 wasn't well received? I think that's why they had such a big marketing push, and, even to the point of like suppressing any negative reactions to it, is because they're like, we need these people to come back in a year. But if you had it all at once, like nobody could say anything.
Yeah, and I'd say the same thing about Mission Impossible, that they really shot themselves in the foot doing a Dead Reckoning Part 1, and you're saying, okay, I'm getting half the story, and I have to come back for Part 2, but then now I think COVID ended up giving production delays, or maybe it was the strike, one of the two, I forget. I think they were filming it during COVID, but then they had the writer's strike, so it delayed things. Even Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, same thing, where we're still waiting on that Part 2. Is it even Part 2 anymore? Are they going to rebrand it? I don't know. It's very frustrating that this has become so common, and I feel like Wicked is incredibly successful. They're making tons of money, so it's only going to reinforce that, hey, this is a good idea.
Yeah, let's start
do this more. Yeah,
audiences expect this. Versus, like I keep saying, I just wish they would have done something different. This is something special, a beloved musical that's been around for a long time, that people have been dying to see a theatrical version of it, or a film version of it. I just wish they would have given it a little bit more, a little less of the studio politics, and a little bit more of, and I think the creators, the director, the performances, they did the best but we talk about all the time. It's just like, there's always behind the scenes reasons that audiences never, don't care about. And that's where I'm coming from is, your studio had reasons to break it up into 2. Your studio has reasons for the marketing blitz and yada, 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 and the directing constraints, but they're not. I have I can only judge you on the movie, not on the reasons and excuses and limitations that you had. And I feel like other stories, like I bring up Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or whatever, despite their constraints at the time, found a way to make a story feel real, feel epic, feel like I want to continue down this road, feel like, despite the story being in this time and place, that there's a whole lot of history on either side of it. And I just wish they could have had that extra time, maybe extra care. We've been waiting for over 10 years for this movie. Give it another few years to do it that way. But this is the movie we ended up with. This is the movie we have. And I think it's incredible. It's great. It's just, it's not exactly what I wanted. It doesn't feel like the full experience that Wicked deserved.
It reminds me a lot of the Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
Taking a book and breaking up into 3 parts just because, hey, let's make some money. And Lord of the Rings was a trilogy, so now The Hobbit has to be a trilogy. Let's give it this like weird, glossy, fake veneer. We did it right the first time, 10 years before, but now we're going to do all this CGI nonsense and still use sets and do all the, the production value. But you watch those Hobbit movies and they feel strange. They feel artificial. Feel so and I get the same sensation, like similar commonalities. And even the Hobbit movies are like 10 years old now. And no one looks back as fondly on those as they do on Lord of the Rings, which is 20 years old, I think, or maybe, maybe even more, 25, something like that. It's just 2001, 2002, 2003, something like that. So
I don't know.
These movies are like the ones that stand the test of time are those ones that are done, I think, for they're like the art is held up, and it still makes a bunch of money, And then it seems like they come back around and they go, well, let's just focus on the money part.
Yeah.
And the art part or the craft is lost a little bit in there. And I don't know, maybe that's who knows the reasons behind the scenes. Maybe it was the choice. We want it to look this way. But I could point you to the Hobbit movies and say, well, like, don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Lord of the Rings, do it that way. Harry Potter, do it that way. Don't do it like number 7 Harry Potter, because I don't know anyone that talks about that. That was like, what an amazing finale that they broke up into 2 parts.
But 1, 2, and 3 looked at fondly. Amazing, great movies.
Yeah, there's a lot of fondness and nostalgia for the stuff that is iconic and resonates over time versus the stuff that's like big in the moment. Yes, make some money. The Star Wars prequels, which we talk about a lot, right? Oh, look at this the technological feat of the time, and yet so much of it feels so stiff and artificial because it's just people on blue screens in these like visually they're in like a massive pillared room, and you're going, but like I know that those 2 people are standing in
a
like
box
in like a 10 by 10 rectangle or square.
Exactly.
So we've learned these lessons before. If you're paying attention and you can kind of like, what do you want to map to? What do you want to replicate or imitate? What's your guiding principle? And I don't know what theirs was, but for me, it seems like what we got was more in line with something like the Hobbit movies than was something that was like a true someone taking the source material and really crafting it into something uniquely film cinema versus like, hey, we have this great Broadway show, let's turn it into a movie. And then they just kind of did that. I think they went through those motions, and like, which pays off in the music, the performances, the casting, all of that's great. Even the work that went into to making it, you can tell it's expensive. But it just doesn't feel right to me as like a cinematic experience. It definitely feels more in line with a stage play, but like like on the first night, on the first showing, where everything's brand new, and you're going, I want this to be a little bit more weathered.
2 things I wanted to bring up because it's been in the back of my mind, so I don't want to forget about us talking about this. One is I felt it, and I don't know if this is an editing thing because I don't have an answer to these questions, so I'm bringing them up. So, first thing, I don't know if this is an editing thing, but the musical numbers seem so abrupt. They seem to come out of nowhere. And what I love about other great movie musicals is they seem to, as part of the production or as part of the director's plan, is like, how does the musical aspect manifest in this world? Where does it come from? Or how is it seen? And I bring up something like Chicago. Chicago, the way they film it and the way they make it is all the musical numbers are happening in her head, more or less. This is the way they construct it. It's not like we're all breaking out in a song and dance at the jail. It's how she's seeing the world. It's how she's coping with what's going on in that movie adaptation of Chicago. And I think that's all those scenes, all the musical numbers are done so brilliantly is because they have a language and they have like a rationality behind why there is people singing and dancing. And granted, for Wicked, like, yes, they're in this magical land of Oz, yada, yada, yada. We all sing and dance. Great choreography, all that kind of stuff. I wish there was a language or a convention or a rule of why the musical part of it is happening. And I think in a movie, you need that. Old musicals just were like, oh, singing and dancing the whole time. What's another movie musical film I love? Like Rent. Rent, I think, did a great job of that too. It was more like heightened up, like the characters' way of communicating their emotions. So like when there's a heightened emotional moment, this is when we're going to sing about it. So I think all these other movies have done a great job of giving the music a reason. And I feel like for some reason for me, this movie didn't. It just felt like the movie opens, and I love the opening number, good news, she's dead, the wicked witch is dead. But then I'm like, why are these people just randomly singing in the middle? I just wanted at some point in the movie for it to have a stance or have a say of like why music is manifesting in this world. And it doesn't have to be literal, like the characters are saying it literally, but I just mean the music never connected to the scenes for me. They just happened. It was like music videos in the middle of this movie.
How do you feel about something like The Greatest Showman?
See, that didn't bother me anyway either. And maybe I have to go back and watch it and see like what the difference is.
Yeah.
But it just felt like there was so, and maybe it is because it's different than the Broadway version where like the songs kind of naturally flow together. There's a little scene to like connect the two and then they start singing again. But I was missing that connection between the music and the scenes in this. They just seemed so abrupt to me. And I don't know if you got that. It just was something that got me.
It didn't
in this.
bother me, but I definitely have a preference for things like The Greatest Showman or those Disney Renaissance animated musical movies where the characters become either so excited or like whatever they want is coming to the fore, their emotions take over and they just start singing. But almost every one of those, the music is cued in as like the soundtrack. They like a little chime plays or a little jingle comes in and you're like, it could just be the soundtrack. It could be the score, but then they start singing. And so it feels very like with their emotions building, they start singing. And so it feels very natural. This is kind of what I would say is like more in line with something like Hamilton, where they're just singing. They're just always singing. And yes, there's talking, but then like sometimes they're singing and there's not always a clear reason why.
And maybe that's it, I feel like other musicals, and I don't know why that's what I said. I don't have an answer to this. It's just something I'm gleaning, and maybe I have to watch it a few more times to figure out what I'm really having what I see is wrong with it. Is I feel like, yes, in Greatest Showman in Chicago, the film musical version, in Moulin Rouge, there's a motivation behind why we're singing and dancing on camera. And this just didn't have it for me. And I know the songs, and I know the play, and I know, and still to me, watching this film, I'm just like, and they're gonna break out in the song and dance, and it just doesn't. They're all in the library. Dancing Through Life is such a cool number with the rotating bookshelves and stuff. It looks cool, but I'm like, why are they doing this? and so. So I guess there doesn't always need to be a why for the filmmakers or for
Did you see
people translating these, but it just seemed random to me versus motivated.
Did you see the Mean Girls musical?
So I've seen parts of it. I have not seen the whole thing. This is a long story short, but it was on randomly switching through channels when I was like somewhere, and I just let it cook while I really wasn't paying attention. But yes, I did see the Mean Girls musical.
Because I wonder if I haven't seen it, but I wonder if that would be an interesting point of comparison is like they took a movie, which also was a book maybe? I don't know.
Tina Fey, I think, did the movie as an original screenplay. I'm pretty sure.
And then maybe it became a book? Why am I thinking there's a Mean Girls book?
Well, because they have the burn book in the movie.
But then now they made a new version that they added songs to. So I'm wondering how that feels, taking something that's just a plot, and then now they're throwing singing into it.
But no, I like when it comes to a musical if there is some intentionality between why are we watching characters sing.
Yeah, what pushed you over that edge? What was your other question? You said there were two things.
Oh, the other one. And I know this is part of the Wicked story. It's part of the book. That's part of the whole reason why the book was written. The stage version of Wicked does it a lot, explaining all the origins of everything. Oh, the slippers. How did she learn how to fly?
The hat, the broom.
The broom.
The yellow brick road.
How the yellow brick road got its name. This is the same problem I had with Solo, a Star Wars story. Is like we don't have to explain how he got his name, where the fuzzy dice of the Millennium Falcon came. All in a year, all in the span of a couple moments of his life. His whole life is explained from age 20 to 22. All these things. I do like when movies, whatever it is, hint and nod to the origins of things, the creations of things. But I feel like sometimes it's a little much to explain everything away in such condensed timelines. It's, we have a lot of Easter eggs from our life, but they are over decades. They're over spans of times, these moments that have impacted us down the road. And I feel like movies have a habit of like, Galinda's the one who picked the color of the road because he made a whole diorama with different color options. And it's just like, it's a little on the nose. It's a little much.
So because I was almost going to cut it some slack if they had already done this stuff in the stage version.
And they do. They explain the hat. That's how the Wicked Witch got her hat. They explain a lot of things. There are a lot of Easter eggs and details. And I appreciate those because I feel like they're subtle. They're subtle little things. But then again, there's sometimes where I'm like, this is just too obvious. It's just too, what's the word, quaint? It's just too, like, coincidental. Something, maybe that's what it is.
It's very heavy-handed. It's very on the nose.
Yes.
And it's become the way you write a prequel is to just say, like, what was in the original? Okay, now let's explain every one of those things, and that's our prequel. Instead of telling necessarily, and I don't know, I'll cut Wicked some slack because it's been around for a while, but the new trope, I feel like the new modern way of making prequels, we're going to explain every single thing. Oh, where did he get the car? How did he do this? How did he do that? And you're going, I just want a good story. I don't need like answers to all the riddles. I wasn't even asking those questions in the first place. I just assumed these things existed. It's a real world, right? In their universe, it's real to them. So like stuff exists, and you need props, and you need things. But where did he get his jacket from? I don't care where he got the jacket. It doesn't matter where she got her hat. Like neat, I guess, is all you can say. And if you're sitting there watching the whole movie, going like, "That's neat. Oh, neat. Oh, neat. Oh, the Yellow Brick Road. Neat. Huh? Then you're like, "But what's the story? What's the plot?" These are all little factoids, little footnotes at the bottom of the book. Like, did you know it was actually this time? That's where they. Okay, neat.
And and what's funny is it works in the stage version. I think that is whenever you're translating something, especially something as I wish it's probably so much easier to take a Broadway show, something that was created for Broadway that nobody really cared about, and 10 years from now make a movie about it. Because there isn't all this built up, like I said, stories in your head and my perspective of it and yours perspective of it. I think Wicked had the hardest time dealing with what works on the stage didn't necessarily work in a movie. And recognizing what those points are and figuring out how to like navigate around it. Either don't reference it. Okay, people might be mad, who are used to the stage version, but you're not translating the stage version to film. I think you're taking the music, you're taking the book and saying like, how do we make a movie? Instead of like, how are we fulfilling all the stage people's expectations? And that was just one small part of it. And a lot of those things like the hat and stuff are all part of the musical. And I feel like in the stage version, it's cool to get all the origins behind the whole thing. But for some reason, that just didn't work for me the same way in the movie. It felt like too on the nose.
Yeah, and it's just so coincidental that, I mean, in the movie, they spend 10 minutes with the wizard.
Yeah.
It's not a long time, and I think Jeff Goldblum did a great job. I really enjoyed his...
No, Jeff Goldblum was one of my favorite parts of that whole movie.
His performance as a wizard is perfect, I think, spot on. But in that 10 minutes they spend together, 2 minutes is spent on naming the Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are the chances that you show up to meet the wizard? He's secretly your biological father. Mm-hmm. He's got this mastermind plan to get rid of all the animals. And while that's happening, he's also going to decide what color the road is going to be. And he built LEDs into it to to decide, so he can decide what the road's going to be. It's those moments that you go, this is so it's the fan service part. Mm-hmm. It's the manufactured part that's just there because it's like, remember watching The Wizard of Oz? Remember the Yellow Brick Road? Well, we're going to show you how that came about. I just thought it was always there. Yeah. I didn't think anyone decided what color it should be. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's that, and, they get in the hot air balloon.
No, yeah.
We're setting up Defying Gravity. What is she doing? Defying Gravity in the building with the hot air balloon. And did I think it was a cool visual moment? Yes, but I don't know. In retrospect, I'm just like, what else could we have done? Was this the best option on the table? I keep saying I don't have the answers without, like, diving into it a little bit more of, like, what I would have preferred to see or what I think would have been better. But I think a lot of the choices were just the easy choices, not the right way to adapt the story for screen.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, it's one of those, like, I kind of saw it out of obligation. I was actually impressed. My expectations were so low that I walked away going, yeah, that was decent. But it didn't stick with me in a way where it's like, I can't wait to watch that again. Mm-hmm. I can't, oh man, that's going to be like on repeat, like every month in my house or, something. Yeah. There's movies like that just are so good that you just, like, you want to binge them over and over and over again. Like The Greatest Showman, that's my, like, go-to. Like, I watch that every week. Like, the music's great. Love the story. And then there's other things where you're like, I saw it out of obligation and I checked that box and now I know what that's like. And, maybe I'll watch it again, maybe, but I'm not like hungry for it in the same way that I might be to like turn on Lord of the Rings or turn on Harry Potter or watch Star Wars again. Cause it's just like, there's a punchiness to the way movies used to be made. So we just watched Home Alone again for umpteenth time. Who knows, right? Because we just watch it every year. And it's so reconsumable because every line, every shot is crafted with intention. They're saying words because they mean something and you got to pay attention. And the shots that they show you, it's like, oh, the passport ended up in the garbage. Oh, they counted the kid's head. Like you're seeing visually all the reasons why this set of circumstances happened. And you're punctuating all the character dynamics with the lines that they're saying to each other and the words they're choosing. And it's so tight. And I mean, Home Alone is a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's short, it's quick. The part that everyone remembers, like the hijinks and like the booby traps, is all of like the very end.
Yeah.
The like whole movie is just like some kid at home.
Even the last quarter, it's really not most of the movie.
But that movie is so tight and rewatchable. And the only time it gets patted down and bogged down is when he goes to the church and he like talks to the neighborly old man. It's this kind of like slow part where it's like, all right, I'm going to go like make some popcorn or something.
Yeah.
Because that part gets a little bit like lost in the kind of, yes, you're telling a story. We're getting the backstory for the grandpa character who lost his relationship with his son and how that relates to this young boy who like lost his family and all this stuff. And so there's purpose to it, but it's not as tight and punchy as the rest of the movie. Not just the booby traps, but also like the whole beginning and the middle where things are happening with purpose.
Yeah.
And Wicked felt like it was just kind of like the bogged down version of like, we'll just like have them talk, have them interact. They'll explain things, but you're not getting it in that kind of perfect, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like ultra condensed, but like still feels real, still feels genuine. I almost think of things like, I don't know, just the writing. It needs to be super, super tight to get that sensation. And you get like, oh, that's why.
And I think there's something in the timeline too. The Broadway show, the stage version, I think can get away with hops in time. You're just witnessing moments from their life. We have the timeline of everything that happened. We're just going to give you the highlights. And that's where the musical numbers come in. Ooh, they meet each other. They don't like each other. So they have the song about how they don't like each other. They have the song where they find common ground. The way the movie presents it is all this happens in a week when it's supposed to be over their school career, over time. So I think that maybe there's something lost in the translation of the movie doesn't have a clear definition of like, what's the timeline here? Like, who are they when they meet? They don't get along.
Because even Harry Potter,
they find some common ground. Harry Potter, the first one, Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, whatever, is over a school year.
And the seasons change. It gets snowy, and they have like winter coats, and then it's like springtime.
So I wish this movie did something different, something cinematically in the progression of time, other than the flashback when she's a kid, and the kids are throwing rocks at her, and she throws them back, with her magic. Or, all these moments just seem to happen all together. She leaves class. She meets Fiyero. Now Fiyero goes to the school. You got accepted to school day one. Like, how is all this happening in 1 week? Or, like one short time frame? And then she gets on the thing to go to Oz. Are you done with school? Like, what part of the school year are you in where you get in the train and go to Oz? Yeah. The timeline doesn't matter so much in the stage version, because you realize you're just seeing glimpses of life throughout a timeline. This didn't do anything to show the passage of time between the days, the weeks, the months. Not, even in the same day, they meet Fiyero, he gets to the school, he does Dancing Through Life. In the same day? Like, have the scenes where he's like getting to know these kids, yada, yada, and then so I don't know if they could have done something different to show that we're looking at moments throughout their life
and make it
together.
feel more like a real place.
Yes.
To tap into that authenticity, the genuine feeling of, oh yeah, the seasons change, so their outfits change, and like the foliage and the trees change. Like we're getting progress.
Yes.
This felt very like one note. Like everything is the same the whole time. Oz is just Oz, and she goes out into that wheat field at
Yeah.
one point, like that.
That's the very beginning.
We don't, but like is that harvested? Are they like, is that used for food? Like there's just little details. She's studying at one point. What is she studying?
Yeah.
These are like, they're not questions I have while I'm watching it, but after the fact, it feels like everything, it's like she's just like the bookworm and she's studying to study. We never saw the class that gave the assignment that said like, this is the project and like why that's important that she needs to study. She's just studying because that's what characters do. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you just drink coffee in the corner. And so that feels all artificial, where I'm thinking of like other movies where they give more depth, and it's not spending a lot of time, it's just understanding the significance of why what they're doing is important versus just, oh, it's a character quirk, she studies and the other people don't, like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine, that works, but I'm not getting much out of that.
And part of, you brought up, what's Elphaba's arc in this movie. There, doesn't seem to be much of one, while Glinda has one. I kind of have a little theory, and just this is only because of like how the story actually goes, is that this movie is Glinda's movie. So this movie was more about her. Elphaba's more of a background character. Yes, lots happens to her. She's a main character, but we kind of latch on to Glinda more. I think she has more scenes. She has more character development. She has more going on in this movie, of being the popular girl who shows up at school, who's running the scene, and then like she has to be taken aback when things don't go her way. She doesn't get to practice sorcery. She has to befriend the girl that nobody likes in order to get what she wants, and she finds some common ground with her. So I feel like this is much more like Glinda's movie in arc, and then in part 2, all the elements of the story revolve around Elphaba. So I think that's her, all those scenes, all those moments are going to be following her, what she's doing, how she's changing, yada, yada, yada. So I think that was maybe intentional by the filmmakers, that let's focus on Glinda. Ariana Grande's the big star. She's probably the big draw for most people who are casual fans or just know about it. They're going to go see the movie for her. So I think they put her up front a lot in this one. And yeah, she has the funny moments. She has some of the sweet, tender moments. I did really love her performance of the character. And I think she did a really, really good job having some depth and nuance in her character versus just like, I'm the bubbly girl. Like you can tell sometimes when she's sad or confused or, doesn't know what to do. I think she did a lot of good job with those like subtle moments. But still, it's just like, all right, we need the other half for this to feel whole.
To feel complete, yeah. My last question for you, and it's actually related to the casting, because I thought everyone, as far as the cast goes, was like spot on perfect. The only one I had a question about was Elphaba's dad.
Oh, yeah.
I got such a weird vibe from him anytime he was on screen, and I know he's supposed to be like, he doesn't like his daughter because, she's green, and he, prefers the other daughter, because but
that's
like
his real daughter.
because but then like he had a moment. I think he's on the train platform, or he's on the train somewhere around when the train scene. He has a moment with Bach, and he has this like, you better take care of my daughter kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I'm talking about? Because I'm even
Kind
like
of.
losing it. I'd have to watch the movie again,
Yeah.
unfortunately, to really like crystallize what I'm talking about. But I just got such a weird vibe from him, and I was like, is my weirdness with the character, or is it with the actor? Is he supposed to be this way, or is this guy playing this part? Oh, I don't know his name.
Yeah. I'm trying to pick up on like maybe what you're feeling. I kind of just cast the dad character aside. I didn't really like think much of him.
Like, I think maybe the way I could pinpoint it is like he felt like he was acting on stage in a movie, where his the way he delivered his lines, his performance was so theatrical, where everyone else was more like grounded and realistic, and played their part, and he was like giving this like I really hate you, and you're like, but would you really treat your daughter this way in public?
Yes.
Would you really make it's like to her face? Like I get it if it was like an eye roll or something, aside, but the performance was so over the top for me, where it felt like I should watch this on a stage when I'm far away, not when I'm up close.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing like how big you're being with and I'm wondering, is it supposed to be that way? If you thought the same thing?
Yeah, just maybe there could have been different choices, because he's pretty like outright in his mistreatment of Elphaba, the dad, the mystery. And I wish it was a little bit more subtle, more secretive, because he's a public figure.
Yeah,
He's the mayor, the mayor or something like that. congressman of
I think it's the
Munchkinland.
mayor, right?
I think it's the mayor. I'm trying to remember. But anyways, I wish it would have been like he's pretending that she's a beloved daughter to people around him.
Yes.
But you know, he'll whisper to her, "You better make sure." You know, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's more secretive. It's more. I just those little changes could have made the story so much. Oh, the abuse she gets, the neglect she gets from
And no
her
one
family
understands.
is secret.
Yeah.
It's, you know, she says,
yeah.
"Oh, what's your secret? What's your darkest secret?" And you know, what did she say? I killed my mother or something like that, or what did she say in that scene? I'm trying to remember.
Does she say anything?
She says something.
Yeah, it's kind of glossed over though.
It's and then Galinda's just like, "Oh no, that wasn't your fault. It's not your fault that your sister is paralyzed and that your mom has."
Did she say that?
No, she says something. Anyways, without saying.
I don't remember.
Anyways, that was a moment, but I wish it was more like her mistreatment from her father was more secretive.
Yeah.
So that when it is revealed to other characters, you know, that she's mistreated, it's like, what?
Shocking. Yeah.
No. He seems like such a kind guy to you and all this, and so
What?
I don't know,
No.
no. But it's just like, oh, the guy who abuses you in front of everybody, he's mean to you? Oh, yeah, we knew that.
Yeah, we knew that.
we saw it.
Yeah, we hated you too. They all hate her because she's green.
Yeah.
Which seems to be like not that shocking in a land of talking animals. Just to see someone who's green.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, they really hate her and find her very shocking.
And that's part of the musical and stuff too, but I think the movie should have made it more of like who she is. I wish her magic was more of the thing that made her different that people were scared of than her being green.
If it were more destructive,
Yeah.
I think that would have done it. Because she has like accidents, but nothing bad really happens. Maybe part two.
And that's what the story is really about, is all the accidents when she's trying to fix things with her magic make things worse, which is why she keeps getting vilified for her magic.
But she doesn't do it a lot.
Not in this movie. Not yet.
Oh.
So that's why I wish maybe too they could have added some more in of her being misunderstood or mistreated because of what she was doing, not just the two scenes of levitating her sister,
Yeah.
throwing some rocks at kids. I wish her having magic abilities was more of the crux of why people were afraid of her, because they don't understand. Not everybody has magical powers, or magical powers like this haven't been seen in a long time, so we don't know how to treat you. Green is just the physical manifestation of it, but we don't care about that. We care about what you're capable of, that we are don't know.
Some actual consequences
And I
to
think
those
that
accidents.
would have had more impact on the story than like, we don't like you because you look different. We get this narrative all the time in our current society of like people are treated differently just because of the way they look. So I wish this story wasn't so shallow about it.
Yeah.
That they were saying something a little deeper.
I agree. I think that would have been more complexity is always good. Was there anything, that's everything I wanted to talk about
Yeah,
for
that's
Wicked.
everything I had to talk about too. Especially, I think, not that we'll probably do this again, maybe for part 2 in a year.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something like I want to see the movie again. I've only seen it the one time. And the book is very, like, even when I read the book is very dense, like in terms of details and stories and in how the stories weave together. The Broadway version, for as much as I love it, is very superficial. Like, I feel like the Broadway version is very simple. You know, it has the music, it tells the origin story of all these little Easter eggs from Wizard of Oz, and there's some emotional impact in the songs, but the story itself is like pretty simple. Mm-hmm. But I wish the movie would have taken the liberty to have like a clear message, a clear stance, some clear nuance in why are we telling this story? What do we want to say? Yeah. And I definitely don't want this big political statement about the world we live in, but I just wish it just feels like it's a little shallow, a little.
Yes, in the context of it being a part 1, part 2, this giant thing where you have 3 hours of my time and attention just for half the story, I think you ought to say more than something that is kind of shallow. If it was condensed into one movie and it was just simple and kind of not lighthearted, but just very breezy to get through, with fun musical numbers, and the story and the characters can be more simple and shallow.
Yeah.
I think that lends itself to that type of thing. But the moment you break it up and you make it this bigger thing, now I'm looking for those layers of complexity that I'm like, well, I guess I can fill in the blanks, but I really don't want to have to. I want it to be deep and rich on its own.
Yep. And even with the animal stuff, it has all these little things that they touch on, but it never, it's like a tea light versus like a flame, something that you can really get behind. And just my last thing was, being such a huge fan of the music originally, it was really hard not to sing along during this movie. And I get the theater etiquette, or, movie theater etiquette, not to talk during a movie and stuff. And I'm sure they're going to have sing-along versions of it or whatever. And even I had to practice restraint when I saw it live on Broadway, too. So I think that maybe that's when you love the music, you just want to, like, sing along and not just sit there and watch it. But I'll have to go see the sing-along version.
Yeah, I was surprised no one in the theater even made a whisper of a song. It was just everyone's sitting there watching and the music's happening, and packed theater. They're making a bunch of money.
No, I mean, and that's the funny thing. We did the same thing after Dune Part 2. Loved it. And what was the other one we saw together more recently? Mad Max.
Yeah. Oh, Furiosa.
Furiosa. That's what it was. Furiosa. But anyways, not to bring up those and talk more about those, but just like this thing of leaving the movie theater and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I saw a movie. I'm so glad I went through this range of emotions, and, it's big, it's epic. You're part of this moment in history. Wicked's such a big cultural phenomenon right now. So I left the theater feeling so satisfied or so happy. And then just to look back on moments throughout the movie and stuff and feeling dissatisfied. I don't think it was a bad movie. I want to feel what other people are feeling when they're like, this is the best movie I've ever seen. This is a cinematic masterpiece. And I'm like, I wish I had your context to view the movie that way. And I think for some of those people saying that, it's because they wanted Wicked the musical movie for so long that they are trying to make this what they've always wanted. And I don't think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be very hard to do in a part one format.
Yeah.
To make the best movie of all time, and it happens to be a part one of something. Like, you're not telling a complete story.
Yeah.
Like, for all the things we've discussed, that seems unlikely to me that you would make the best movie of all time. And even thinking back on Lord of the Rings, the one that won Best Picture was the conclusion.
Yeah.
Because they stuck the landing, and by that point in time, you're factoring in parts, the first and the second, going, okay, this is now complete. We're going to give you the award now. Yeah. On this one. Maybe part two could, but I just don't think it's there. I'd say this movie, if I had to give a rating, I enjoyed it. Like enjoyability, like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. This should be our rating scale, because this is normally how we break things down. In terms of blanket, did you like it? Did you not like it? A+. Yeah. Music, fantastic. Loved it. In terms of cinematic execution, and if we were really going to break this down and talk about its merits of filmmaking, I give it a C+.
Yeah. It's that feeling of like so much wasted potential, which has been the unfortunate commonality with the modern Star Wars and Marvel movies, and really anything from Disney for that fact. It seems like where they have so much money. They have, some of the best people in the world working on this stuff. And they just always fall short of that, like what could have been great, what could have been another 10 out of 10, incredible epic, is again like a 7 or an 8 or a 6, and you're kind of going like, man, so much wasted potential, so much disappointment, because everything was pointing to like perfect casting. You already have the blueprint, like this already exists, people love it, and all you have to do is just kind of like take that and perfect it, and it's like you just took it and you didn't do anything with it.
Yeah. You
kind of just executed what it was, and because it's a movie, you have to make some of those changes sometimes, and the changes they did make, I was like, all right,
yeah,
cool, we got the backstory for the Yellow Brick Road. I assume that was just for the movie.
Yeah, just for the movie. From what my knowledge of the stage play, I don't think that's really a highlight.
Yeah, it's just, okay, another interesting little tidbit.
It did feel a little bit more like copy paste.
Which I'm sure there's some people that
really.
really want that.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, I want a movie musical is more like the ones that, like The Greatest Showman was made as a movie, correct?
Made
Like
as a
that's
movie.
just a movie.
Original, yeah, for movie.
And I feel like that comes across on the screen in the way that that story is crafted, the way
Yeah.
it's shot, the way the sets are built. Like it feels cinematic while also being very theatrical.
Yeah. And I think what's being lost a lot of times in filmmaking, maybe this will be my final word about my mixed emotions about it, is that I wish it just did something new and different, even in a small way. Because so much of it is familiar. The music is familiar. Even the celebrities in it are pretty familiar. Going back to Harry Potter, I think Harry Potter felt new and fresh and different because nobody on screen, I mean, yes, some very popular British actors were in it as faculty, but you had these fresh-faced young kids who are amazing. You know, something felt fresh and different about those movies. Lord of the Rings, the way they approach production with the miniatures and the costuming and filming on location in New Zealand, like, it did what no other movie had done before. Go back to the original Wizard of Oz, the Julie Garland one. That movie did things that color in movies. That movie said, we're going to take this story and do something that's never been done before on film, in theaters. And I think that's what Wicked was missing. It had an opportunity to say, like, this is Wicked, and you are going to have an experience like no other movie has given you before. And it felt like just something that anybody could have made in Hollywood for any reason. Mm-hmm. It lacks something special of like, why am I seeing this on screen?
Yeah.
I never like CGI anyway. I like subtle CGI, but it's just like the transformation scene of the Chistery, I think is his name, getting the wings. I'm just watching a cart.
You know what my kids say?
What?
They're like, it's Planet of the Apes.
Oh.
They thought it was like Planet of the Apes. I was like, no.
So I said that.
Not Planet of the Apes.
Here is my comparison for that too. I guess we have a lot of good comparisons in cinema now, even in small pieces, that this film should have taken notes from. Okay, we need to care about these animals, or, you know, Chistery's in pain because he's growing wings because of the spell from the Wicked Witch. And I felt more emotion for the bucktooth walrus in a wheelchair in Guardians of the Galaxy than I did for any animal character. Dr. Dilliman, you know, like he does, he's turning into an animal because he's bad. I think the character was great, but there wasn't enough for me to build emotion for the animals or whatever. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy, it's volume 3, right?
Volume 3, yeah.
So they have these weird cybernetic animals, the weird bunny, the otter, and all that. I felt so much emotion for those characters in that movie, even though they were CGI bizarro creatures. I feel like this movie should have taken some notes for like how those characters were developed, for any of this to have any impact. And yes, like you could tell the monkey's in pain, but maybe we could have. Not that we need to spend a ton of time in Oz learning about this monkey history, but it's just so much of that is just lost. It's just like, oh, he's in pain. Good. I feel bad for the animals versus like them creating a world where like, oh no, this is sad. I care about these characters. Something bad is happening to them.
Yeah, the difference between like so the scene, the way it plays out from memory, they are approaching the castle in the Emerald City. They're going to see the wizard, and they just pass all the monkeys.
Yeah.
And they kind of give like a glance, or there's something kind of like intimidation where they look a little like tough, the monkey characters. But they just pass, and then they talk to the wizard, and then this whole thing happens where like, oh, it's this terrible thing she's done by casting this spell she didn't even know she was doing.
Yeah.
And it gives the monkeys the wings, the iconic, right, the flying monkeys.
monkeys.
And so this all unfolds, and it's very graphic in a way that is, like, it's a PG movie, which I did appreciate that this isn't like, you know, like, it's a family-friendly movie. So it's as graphic as they can make it. But it is a very, like, tragic thing that, like, you can tell the animal's in pain. But there wasn't the scene of, like, I think they're chimpanzees. I just keep saying monkeys, whatever.
Yeah, chimpanzees.
helping her in, opening the door, bringing like a plate as like a servant, like to be more involved in what's happening. And you say like, oh, that's kind of like cute or sweet or innocent. And like you get this attraction, and it wouldn't take up any more screen time.
Yeah, that's
it's just
true.
having something happening, even in the background while the wizard's giving his spiel on like he's built these like this diorama of the Yellow Brick Road. Maybe there's the monkey character in the
monkey
corner
dusting it.
Yeah,
and then
or
he's like, okay, it's fine. I need to show it off.
Yeah.
And the monkey like scurries away because
right, or like he painted one and hands a figure to the wizard, and here you go, and you get some attachment to this character, this monkey, as this is a part of and a personality, even though they don't just talk or anything, but just to do things, to be part of the scene versus like, hey, don't you feel bad for this chimpanzee that's growing wings? That looks painful, doesn't it? You go, yeah, but aren't there just like, there's just like an army of them and they're just like guards? Okay, like I don't feel much for that.
Yeah.
But if they were a part of the action that was taking place, I would feel a lot more connected to that tragedy that unfolds.
Yeah, there should have been monkey shopping in the courtyard. Like
something.
Monkey and his family because the guard is leaving for work. This could be in the background. This could be subtle, but give just these characters some real life, some real, not just like an intimidating hallway of monkeys, and then we're supposed to feel bad for one of them that sprouts wings for some random reason because she was trying to fly. I don't know.
Yeah, and then she casts the same spell later, but it enchants the broom that doesn't grow wings.
Yeah.
It just can fly now. Was she trying to... There was some confusion I had about motivations. Was this on purpose?
And I think that the last the last part, and that's... I keep saying this is the final word we're going to say. Let's make this the last thing.
Go for it.
So Defying Gravity is the big epic number. And on the stage, it's so cool because like the last thing you see her is like some lift there. And that scene is really cool on stage too. If you ever get a chance to see it on stage, you have to, because that's why Defying Gravity was written for this moment. And she's singing out. They're strapping all these like things to her, and she turns around, and out of nowhere she's being lifted into the sky. And it was the cool moment like in Back to the Future, the musical, where the DeLorean takes off and we're like, what? There's a car flying on stage. You get that same feeling when she finally defies gravity and gets hoisted up and sings. And I feel like this movie kind of took that away a little bit. She was already flying around and she's like, defying gravity, and you're like, well, I've already seen you flying for the past like 5 minutes, so like this isn't epic anymore. And two, the CGI nature. Maybe I'm just being overly critical. Like the CGI nature of like just her floating there in the sky with a big fake cape, like didn't have the impact I really wanted. That this is an iconic song, an iconic moment for a character. And it feels like it just was all of it was a little unmotivated.
It reminded me of the goofy flying scenes in The Matrix.
Yes, where Neo can fly in his trench coat cape. Is just
he's like flying around, and it's clearly CGI, clearly goofy, and not in like a superhero kind of way, but in this like, look how cool I am. I can fly around. I got the same vibes as Wicked, as in whatever that second Matrix movie is.
Yeah. And I don't know if this bugged you or you noticed it at all, but I noticed the editing. Isn't there the saying, there's the saying that like good editing is like you never see or whatever.
It's invisible,
good editing is invisible. And there are so many times in this movie where I'm like, why are we cutting so much? Why are we flashing between this and this and this? And I just noticed the editing so much. And in Defying Gravity, in the end, that was one of the moments where I'm like, I just noticed the editing. I felt the editing. And no knock against the editor again, too. I always try to be the nice guy. These are super talented people. These are super, super talented people. But yeah, there's just moments in it where I'm like, I know it's a movie, I know it's adapted, but like we don't need to like cut to everything, let some stuff. And that's where I think I say too, like do something different, do some cool camera angles, or do a dolly up with her as she's like rising in the tower on her, like make it this use the tools you have, a camera, some jibs, some drones, something to make it feel like this powerful moment, not like a cartoon superhero flying around. So maybe, my version that I'll direct in 30 years. You will be DP. I will produce.
Yeah.
We'll find a talented director.
Yeah. I don't know how you explain that to somebody, that it's not criticism to like say you could do it better,
Yes.
but just to say, hey, this was my response to it. Like, I guess there's a lot of times where you put a lot of effort into like making a recipe or cooking a meal. Thanksgiving just happened.
Yes.
You know, you do the best you can, you make whatever dish it is, and then you want people to enjoy it, and you want to hear that feedback of like, this is amazing. But also sometimes you make a dish that like did need more salt. It didn't cook long enough. It didn't
Yeah.
quite get what you were after. You thought you had the right ingredients, but actually it might have been better to not get rid of the butter this time.
nutmeg.
You should, yeah. You know, there's things where you could, having that feedback from somebody going, you know, like, this was good, but like, you know, the way you made it last year was better, or, you know, yeah, it was pretty good, you know, and then that's how you actually reach that, pushing yourself to make something better. And all you can do is just take people's reactions. Some people might always just hate it. They just don't like green beans. So they're never going to like green beans. They're just not going to like Wicked. And then there's other people that you're going, I wanted this to actually be the 10 out of 10, the A+, the 5 stars. And here's where it fell short for me. I think that actually is valuable in the like, hey, let's not just sit around and complain about things, but say like where this missed the mark, because then that, what it does for me, honestly, is it reinforces my ability to like, okay, if when I'm telling stories, when I'm making content, when I'm thinking about what I want to do, I don't want to repeat these same mistakes. I want to think about character motivations. Why are people doing what they're doing? And that to me is what it always comes down to. If I can get invested in what a character wants, then I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
Oh, you want it, this means a lot to you. And so every obstacle, everything that gets in the way keeps them from that goal. And I go, oh yeah. This is a good story. I'm into it. When people are just like doing things for doing them, because it's, oh, something's happening and look at the spectacle. Yeah, but like why? And like, what are they after? What are we trying to do? It's why I never get invested in the James Bond films, because it's so convoluted of who wants what and who's, and I go,
Yeah, especially recent, like Daniel Craig ones.
like, yeah,
Okay.
something's happening. It's visually stimulating, but I can never really get connected if I don't understand why people are doing what they're doing. And it could be as simple as like in Moana, which Moana 2 is out, I haven't seen, but in Moana, she knows that the island, there's the devastating plague or whatever is coming. Something bad's going to happen. I have to save my people. So I'm going to go on this adventure, get Maui, and do all this fun stuff. It's like, great.
Yeah.
You have a goal. You have a purpose. I understand what you want to do. It doesn't have to be complicated. That can come from the characters and their interactions over time and how they react. But just what's your goal? What's your purpose? What are you trying to do? And I always want to make sure I put that into the stuff that I make, because then it seems to just always do better. It's more satisfying to have like a journey with the wants and goals and desires.
Yeah. Well, we might have to maybe have a follow-up conversation because of Wicked, this very popular movie weekend. We got Wicked, Gladiator 2, Moana 2. Huge movies. All riding on the curtails of other popular things. So we'll save this for another time. But yeah, just the conversation. I think that's why we have these conversations and breaking down other movies, other shows we love, and doing this for Wicked is just looking at where Hollywood is, where filmmaking is, where storytelling is, and noticing all of the issues that have come up from greed, studios, directives or initiatives of just wanting to make money and not wanting, filmmaking anymore, cinema anymore.
And the silver lining is that more money doesn't solve the problem. They have the biggest budgets they've ever had, and yet what we're getting is this like watered down, like not exceptional version where there's plenty of movies being made still with like limitations, budget restrictions, doing it for pennies on the dollar. And even historically, lots of restrictions, budget crunches, timeline crunches, still making masterpieces. And you're saying, okay, so the answer isn't in the finances. It's not having more money. Yeah, it helps, but it's not the solution. It's actually a lot simpler, and it starts with like the paper and the pen, and just what ideas are you writing down?
Yeah.
What's that story you're telling, and making that good. Almost like the part that's like the cheapest. Just writing an idea down. Is it good? And then how do you deliver that in a compelling way?
Yeah, for sure.